So, any questions from this particular topic?
So, Sudarshan, Sudhir, like, I just want to know, like, I missed yesterday topic. So can you know, like, what is the topic yesterday we discussed? I'll go
Sorry.
through the. Yesterday I missed the session, so I just want to know, like,
Oh, okay. So, should I have discussed about what are the different instance, what do you say, types are available, the billing types. For
okay,
example, what is the difference between on-demand, spot instance, reserved instance, dedicated host? These are the points what we have discussed yesterday.
oh, okay, thanks.
So today, I just want to talk about. I think I've asked few questions. I don't know when you'll be answering it. You can just check that.
Even the private user ID trying to log in that some right that deleted.
Yeah, key-based authentication if it is lost, how we are going to access. Social revenue. Okay. And one more thing is, I just want to give you the questions related to Linux topic. These are the questions what we have. Let's go through it. So the assignment has to be completed by next Saturday. Okay. Close submissions after the date. So you can't submit anymore after the date was closed. Okay. Make sure you're completing it. So this is the task what you can plan for this particular weekend to come. Next one. If you remember, yesterday I have talked about we will be discussing on what is mean by IAM role, right? So let us discuss that. I'll open the PPT. I think I've not shared yesterday. Let me do that. I guess it's getting printed. Once it is done, I will upload the PDF file. Anyway, this is done. Now let's try to understand what is mean by a role. If you look at this particular picture right now, this one I have captured from one of the AWS events that produced a PPT slide. So I captured from there. So this one talks about what is identity and access management in AWS, how we are managing it. For example, you will have a IAM policy. Now, this particular policy, let us assume it could be an customer managed policy or AWS managed policy. And you also know that there is an inline policy as well. So keep it aside. Now, this is an IAM policy. Now, this particular IAM policy to whom we can attach either it for user. So we can assign this IAM policy to a user, that is IAM user or IAM group. We know, right? Last time we have seen the session how to do that. And now we can also do that to an IAM role. User will try to access your AWS account through the management console. Groups cannot access your management console. There are only to manage the permissions for group of people, group of users, we can say. For that reason only we are using. And not only that, a role is something that, let us say, a service in AWS wants to talk to another service in AWS. So service to service communication. It's not a human being, right? It is not an application. It's not a third-party application or any other application who wants to access your AWS services or resources. Here in AWS, we have one particular service which wants to talk to another service. In those conditions, what we can use? A role. So we have to create a role. For that role, whatever the policy you attach, now that service can talk to another service and do some actions. What does it mean? If you try to draw a picture, for example, we have AWS account. Okay. In this, I have one AWS service, let us say EC2, since we know about it. Now, this service wants to talk to another service. Let us say it is S3 bucket. It is a kind of storage, like your Google Drive. Sorry. Okay. It is like a Google Drive or OneDrive, similar to it. Now, let's this one as S3. Simple storage service. The meaning of S3 is simple storage service. 3S. Okay, it is one of the object storage. Anyway, I'll discuss this point later. Now, this service wants to talk to this particular service. The requirement is that. Then what you need to do? As an administrator, you have to create a role. So for whom you have to create a role? For this EC2. What does it mean? This role has to be used by EC2. Now, after UCT is using this particular role, I need to perform some actions on this particular S3, the target. For that, what we have to do? We have to create a IAM policy, or we can use existing IAM policy and attach it to this particular role. That's what we have to do. Okay. So let us say this is some IAM policy. To understand this whole concept one by one as a step-by-step process, first of all, let me launch an EC2 instance. Okay. First task. I hope you already aware of this particular how to launch EC2 instance. I am hoping that you have already practiced it. Okay. So that's the reason I'm not explaining anything here in a step-by-step process. Random Ubuntu. 1 core CPU, 1 GB RAM is sufficient. Keep here. This is fine. I want to use an existing policy, security group. So it is 8 GB is sufficient, more than enough. Now instance has been launched. You can see here, right now it is in pending. After a few seconds, you will see in running status. If I refresh, no, it is still pending. Yeah, now it is in running status. You can see there. After this, now let me show you what is S3, how it looks, the dashboard. We are not going to discuss anything in detail about S3. This is about S3. Here I have one bucket. Imagine this one is like your Google account, Google Drive account. Okay. So purpose, general purpose buckets here. You can see here. Now in the bucket, you'll have objects, some files. Object in the sense, some files. Okay. Imagine like this is your personal data or some other data, website data, whatever it is. This is called as object. And this is called as bucket. Okay. So if I go back to EC2, now not EC2. After this, so we have seen what is S3 dashboard. We have tried launching EC2 instance. So this particular task is done. Now as EC2 wants to communicate to S3. What is meant by communication? Let us understand. For that, I have to log into the instance. Pick this public IP, command prompt. Where is it? Temple. Ah, they deleted a word. I have only PPK, right? So I have to log in from putty. How come it got deleted?
So maybe 2 days back you have deleted.
No. Yeah, maybe for showing that one of the demo, I guess, if I'm not wrong. How the if the key is lost,
Yes, yes.
maybe. Okay, thank you. Fine, no problem. So let me choose this. Open, accept. Increase this font. Just There is a text size that we can increase. We can increase the font here. Just a second.
Text size you can increase it there, right? You have like size, right? Down. Appearance, right? Yeah, here you can the size of the point. You can
Font.
change.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, got it. Got it. Thank you. So now here, just understand that communication in the sense inside this particular instance, we want to, from this particular instance, we want to communicate to this S3. So how you will start communication? Either you will deploy some application and you will see how your application can talk to this particular S3, or you will run some API calls, or you will run some CLI commands. Okay. So here I want to run some CLI command. What does it mean? This command will try to run some API call to this S3. But without having authentication, first of all, it cannot communicate to the S3. If I need to execute AWS CLI commands inside this particular instance, first I have to install that package. Because by default, AWS CLI will not get installed. We have to do it. So if you remember, last time we have seen how to install AWS CLI. But I think I have shown in Windows. Today, let us see on Linux system. Official document.
This one, right? The Git only, right?
Sorry?
In Linux, we use the Git hub, right? The Git 2 is the one we are used, right? Install.
Git. Why Git?
I remember that's what the package was there in last time.
Last time we have downloaded MSI for Windows system, AWS CLI MSI, and then it has opened a setup wizard. We have just followed the steps and we have installed AWS CLI. Now, in order to run AWS CLI on Linux system, I have to install this package on that. From where I'm planning to run the commands, there we need to ensure AWS CLI got installed.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to do. Just a second, sorry. After it got downloaded, you can see the package. That is zip file. Now we have to unzip this. So run this command. See, remember last time, if you remember, when I discussed about Linux operating system, we have seen wget command, maybe. If not, you can just ignore. If you want to download a file from the any one of the URL, a file or something else, we have seen wget command. But if you want to download a file, we can also use curl command. You can see curl, the URL from where we want to download the zip file and where you want to place it with what name. I don't want to download and save it with the same name. Extension will be .zip, but I don't want to save with this name. If you want to save with a different name, hyphen small o, and then you can provide a name as per your convenience. So this is also one of the approach to download the package or any file from the URL. Not only wget command we can use this. After it got downloaded, now this is a zip file. You know what is zip, right? Compressed. So now I need to unzip this particular file. In a Windows operating system, we use right click and then we will say extract all. But whereas in Linux operating system, we have to use unzip if it is a zip file. You have to look at the extension. Sometimes you might see a tar zip. For that, we have to follow a different procedure. You will see that in the next sessions. Right now, unzip and the file name to which you want to unzip it. This command might get failed. Why? Because in your system, by default, unzip package is not available. In some systems, you might see it. This command will get succeeded. If it is not getting succeeded, what does it mean? Your package is not installed to run unzip command. So let me run it. Sudo apt. Why? Because I'm executing this command apt from sudo user, Ubuntu. Install. And the best part of Ubuntu is it will let you know what command you have to execute in order to install this package. Once it got installed, now I can execute this command. You can say it is getting unzipped. After that, you will see a folder here. Once it got unzipped. Inside that, we have some files. This is a shell script. We have to execute this one to install. So it is simple thing, /. Okay, location is under AWS. We have install file. Now we are executing the script. Same point they have written here. Let me try to give sudo. Why? Because we might be executing some root commands. That's the reason. It doesn't take much time. You can see now AWS CLI got installed. If you want to verify it, just run AWS -- version. You can see which version got installed. With this, we have successfully installed AWS CLI on the system. Okay. Now, let me try to run some command to interact with S3 bucket. And I want to list the objects, or let us say buckets. For that, we have AWS CLI command. I want to interact with service S3. So S3. And I want to list buckets. So LS. Since I know about this command, I'm explaining you in a straightforward. But if you don't know about this, you have to search in the official document. So they will let you know to list buckets, what are the command we have to execute. So this is the command. Now we can see it is saying you unable to locate credentials. You can configure credentials by executing this command, which is a true statement. In the previous session, we have seen long back, if you remember, I've shown you how to configure credentials. In that, I've talked about profile, access key, secret key. We have discussed all these points. Now here also, it is asking you, I'm not able to see credentials in the default location. Please configure credentials by using AWS configure. But it is not necessary. Why? Because this is your AWS service. Now this service wants to talk to this particular service. For that, we don't need to provide any access key and secret key. We just need to create a role and assign the role to this particular EC2. How to do that? And then while creating a role, I want to attach a policy. This policy, what you will attach, what are the actions you want to perform on S3? That particular policy you have to select, not EC2. Because your EC2 is doing some particular task on S3. So on the target, what are the actions you are planning to execute? That particular policy we have to select. Here I'll be choosing S3 read only, something similar to this particular option. S3 read only. So the action is pretty simple. I'm going to create a role for this EC2 to utilize it. Who can use this particular role? Only EC2. And I will attach a policy to this particular role only to perform the action related to S3. That to read only activity, not anything like write, create, update, modify, or delete. We are not going to perform that actions. Let's see. Step by step process again. First create a role and then attach IAM policy for this EC2. How to do that? Go back to IAM service. If you remember last time I've created one customer managed policy. It's not there. Okay. Roles. Let me try to create a role. So create. This is also not necessary. Complete, which I have created long back. Okay, fine. Now create. So trusted entity type means to whom you want to give this particular role. I want to give to AWS service, or you might be want to give this particular role to another AWS account. What does it mean? For example, if you look at the diagram, you might be having one user in another AWS account. For example, I'm saying if I assign a role to that particular user, he can log into my account and he can do some particular actions. What are the permissions I've given this in this IAM policy? So this person can access my account with the policy what I've attached. So only those activities he can perform. That is called as assume role for a user. But now we are not trying to assign a role to a user. We are trying to give it to a service. Okay. If you are planning for that, we have to use second option. Another one is web identity, external. External web identities will be there, right? If you want to give to them web identity or SAML based authentication, custom trust policy, you can go for these options. For now, we are using AWS service. So which service it is? EC2. Who wants to use this particular role? That service we have to select. It is nothing but EC2, first option itself. Next. So what is the policy that you want to attach? In this particular scenario, S3. Where is the read-only access? Here. And then next, give some name to this role. Let us say EC2 S3 access. So that's it. What does it mean? For this particular EC2, we are trusting. Okay, on behalf of us, your EC2 instance will try to contact your S3 and do the actions. Okay, that is called as assume role, which is called as assuming a role. Now, this particular role, what you have created, will be assumed by this particular EC2. On behalf of us, your EC2 is trying to do some actions on S3 with the permissions what we have given. Okay, so this is called as token-based authentication. Token-based authentication. You might ask a question saying that how it is going to authenticate. With the help of this particular role, it will generate a token. Now that token is a point of contact for your S3 of the EC2 to do some actions. And this token will get expired for every 24 hours. Let me show you. After the creation, I can just talk about it. Let me select the role. You can say every 1 hour. Maximum session duration. With this role, if you have a session got established, that will be available for maximum 1 hour, not more than that. Again, it will get recreated. That's fine. If you want to change this one, you can change it, the duration. So is this clear? How to create a role and attach a policy? Who is going to use this particular role? Only EC2 instances. No one else can use this. Okay. Now, after this, what we have to do? We have done this role creation and we have seen how to attach IAM policy to a role. Now we have to associate this particular role to this EC2. So we have to attach this IAM role as a profile. We call it as profile. How to do that? Let us see. Go back to the instance from which you want to run the commands. Select that instance. Then we can see here actions. Under that, we can see security. There we can see modify IAM role. Select that. As of now, your instance is not having any IAM role. You can see no roles attached. So let me select the drop-down list. Here we can see the role what we have created. It will show you only the role which is associated to EC2 service. Okay, so select that and then update. Once it is done, now the benefit of this is here we don't need to store any credentials. Now if I run the same command, it will work. You can see I'm able to see the bucket. The command was successful. But if I run the same command on IAM, it has to fail. Let us test. Why? Because you do not have permissions. Right now it is access denied. Authorization issue. Because this particular user who is assuming the role, this particular role which is attached to the instance, is not authorized to perform what action? List users. On which resource? Now, if I need to resolve this issue, what I have to do? I have to go back to this IAM role and attach the policy, whichever you want. For example, IAM, right? Let me try to give IAM read-only access. Now, let me perform the same action. It will work. You can see there, it got worked. So is this clear? The benefit of this is we don't need to store any credentials. No need to configure any access key, secret key. Now, by using a role, we are trying to authenticate, not by using a user or access key or secret key or the password of the user. With the user, how many ways we can communicate? Either through username password through the management console, or we can use access key and secret key through programmatical access, which I've told you long back. Programmatical access could be through writing a program or through CLI or through API calls. Could be of any form. So there we have to use access key, secret key. But here we are not even using access key, secret key or passwords, because with that we are not using the user as an identity. We are using a role as an identity to authenticate to the service of AWS. AWS.
So,
yep.
So if you see that, so this only authentication now. There is no authorization we gave, right? Only read only, right?
Yes, we have given only authentication through role, and we have attached a policy, right? You have already given the authorization as well. You got it?
Okay.
See, role creation is all about providing authentication. But for that role, we have already given the policy. We have already attached a policy to the role. Means whoever is using this particular role, they can perform the actions only what I've defined in the IAM role. So that's the reason when I've ran the command initially, it got failed when I'm trying to access IAM users, because the policy was not attached to that role. After I have given it, we are able to.
Okay, got it.
So it only will do the policy only. That's the only thing it can do. Or like we used to create a service account to run some scripts and stuff. So that's totally different from this one, right?
That is a different one. So is it you're talking about service account is all about Azure or maybe GCP?
Yeah, Azure.
Azure, right? Azure service account is itself, other people can ignore. See, when you try to create a service account in Azure DevOps, okay, so maybe your Azure DevOps service wants to talk to Azure services, like let's say storage account, or let us say virtual machines, Kubernetes, or something else to run some CI/CD pipelines and all. So we create
Yeah.
a service account. For that service account, we used to provide some permissions, nothing but a role, so that when you're triggering the pipeline will use that particular service account to authenticate to your Azure portal and do some activity.
Yeah, that's the same thing. So if you in the future, are you going to tell us like how to do that, or for
No,
the AWS?
that is all about Azure, right? So if you are really, if you guys are see, that depends upon the CI/CD tool what we have chosen. If you guys are interested in Azure DevOps, we'll discuss about that. Or Jenkins, we have to, whichever it is preferred.
So
We'll
from
discuss on that.
AWS, we don't do that, right? Like we
For
don't
AWS,
use
we
it.
have AWS code build, code pipeline. We already have inbuilt CI/CD available.
Okay.
That is Azure
Thank you.
part. This is AWS part.
Okay, maybe when I see that in AWS, then I can differentiate what is the difference.
Sure.
and stuff.
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, this one you can ignore. I'm just executing this one. Yeah.
So sorry, the question she's asking, right? So that the same thing is available in AWS, right? I mean,
Yes, it is there. You have to use this particular. See, service account is not available here. We are using roles for
Yeah.
service to service communication. In Azure, it is called a service account. Why? Because Azure portal is a different application, and Azure DevOps portal is another application. So how you provide authentication? For that, we use service account.
That's what I mean to say. Like, I mean, this is the naming convention is different. Where we have used the roles, there we have like service account kind of a thing. Like we just
Yes.
naming as a.
There it is service account. Here it is called as roles, and a simple
That's what-
terminology for now to understand. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then make like here we call it roles, and there we call it
There
service
we call it
account.
as service accounts. In GCP, it is called as service account as well.
Oh, okay. So in the future, when we do CI/CD, do we learn to how to create the service account, or it's the same thing roles?
Yeah, if we are planning to learn Azure DevOps as part of the CI/CD for AWS, then we will be learning it. And one more thing, in Azure you have something called managed identity or service principal. Even that also comes under roles topic. Okay,
Any
you might have
basically-
heard about it. Managed identity or service principal.
Okay.
that is in AWS or you're referring to?
Sorry,
The managed identity and the principles you're saying, right?
I'm talking about Azure since she is
Oh.
talking about that, right? So not only service account. If you want your Azure one service wants to talk to another service, we can use either managed identity or service principal as well. That service account is all about when Azure DevOps wants to talk to Azure services,
Okay.
service
Okay.
account. But if your
Okay.
internal Azure services want to talk to each other, either you can go for managed identity or service principal.
Okay.
Okay. So we have three different options over there. But underlying concept is nothing but kind of a roles, what they use.
Okay. Makes sense.
Basically, in
That's the reason
AWS,
Azure is a little bit complex to understand because we have multiple layers.
Okay.
Yes, please. You're saying something?
Yeah, I was saying like here we call it like role, right? Like
Yeah,
there we
simple
call it
role.
Thank you.
See, what is the benefit of all these options? We should not provide any credentials in our application or in our script or in our CLI or some API calls. We have to avoid this credentials utilization, providing those credentials. If you want that, we use something called federation. There are multiple options actually. To
If
keep
the
it so
terminal
simple,
is different, right?
to keep it so
Terminal is-
simple. Sorry?
Terminology is different.
Terminologies and functionalities are also a little bit different. Okay. For now, for us to understand, these roles are nothing but service accounts in Azure DevOps or managed identity or service principal in Azure portal. It is similar to that. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. For now, just understand a simple word. In your AWS, if you want your AWS services to talk to each other, they're not human beings, right? To provide some username, password, or access key or secret key. This is a part of AWS, and this is also a part of AWS. They want to talk to each other. Then why have to store a credentials? Then AWS has developed a functionality called role. If you assign a role to the EC2 instance, the source, it can talk to the destination by using a token. No need to provide any access key, secret key, or username, password. That's a benefit what we have. Got it right?
Okay. Yes, got it. Thank you.
So next one, yeah. So we are done with this now. Let me delete this one. Now, if I delete this particular role, what will happen to these policies?
It will be removed, right? When role is not there.
Yeah, those will get removed. They will get deleted or removed.
It will be removed. I mean, for instance, like
They will only get removed from this particular role. Okay, they're not going to get deleted.
Yeah, it will be detached.
Yes, kind of a detach. So let me delete. Now, if I try to run the command, it will fail. Now, what is this called? Authentication issue. It is not authorization. If it is authorization issue, you will say something like this: access denied. Okay, it will clearly say you that you don't have this permission XYZ and all like that. But when it's authentication issue, either you will see configure credentials or you will see something like, sorry, you will see something like invalid access key ID. Now, what is meant by invalid access key ID? This is part of troubleshooting. Okay. Whenever you see the errors, you have to understand what could have been went wrong. Okay. Even that skill is also important for us. This depends upon the experience, what we have. Now we can see we have already configured. Sorry. My bad. Just a second. Okay. Now it is saying invalid access key ID. But did we configure any access key and secret key? No. Okay. So this is purely authentication issue. Because we deleted role that is being attached to your AWS EC2 instance, now that role is not available. That's the reason you are facing this challenge. Okay. Let me go back here. And for the instance, let me try to delete it. This is not necessary. If you want to see that role which is attached to this instance, you can just check here under security. Sorry. I think here details. Let me show you the IAM role. What happened? This one is showing here. Under security, it has to show. Security group is fine. Oh, this one, sorry. My bad. Instance profile. This is called as ARN, Amazon Resource Name. You will see this one as a common thing. After that, the service, account ID, and the instance profile and the profile name. Here in EC2 point of view, it is called as profile, but in IAM point of view, it is called as role. So don't get confused. When people are talking in interview about profile, imagine it's a role. In instance point of view, it is called as profile. Okay. Sorry. Now, One more question which I have is, can we attach multiple roles to a single EC2 instance? Is that possible? Any guess? How come?
So, for
From the
example,
drop-down list, I will be able to select only one option, right?
yeah, but when, for example, if I want to, okay, I'll take back my word. Okay, so you're saying one role, right? I mean, one role. You're asking multiple actions.
Role.
Right?
Yeah, one role.
Okay. Okay. Then we can't, right? Only one role. We'll have like multiple policies we can able to add for the role.
Yes. So we can attach only one role per instance. So do remember, some people might ask in interview.
Yeah.
So we can attach only one role, or you can say one profile, not more than one. If you really want to perform some actions, try to attach a policy to that particular role itself. Okay. If you want, you can give a try. It will not get updated. It will get overwritten.
Okay.
I hope this is clear. And the another one which I want to discuss is
Provisioning.
yeah. Anyway, status alarms. This particular monitoring we'll discuss in the monitoring part of AWS. That is not necessary now. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay.
Yeah.
As we're talking about the IAM role, so I just wanted to understand one more question. Okay, regarding
Go ahead, please.
the role. So I have like a web tier, and also I have like app tier, and also DB tier. Okay. So, for example, you just, I mean, real operation perspective, like so the middleware guy will take care of the middleware part. Okay, where they have their own MB or like a system admin, like they are using like MB, like that they'll be using the naming, right? So
Okay.
whereas come DB2 admin or DBCs are like something they'll be using the role ID. Okay.
Here there are two questions for me.
Okay.
Are you talking about the operations, what application will do, or the user will do?
When this is like when for the operations perspective, when I'm building the instance, okay, I need to have a communication between app has to talk to DB, and DB
Okay.
has
You mean to say front-end application should be accessing your middleware should access your database, or vice versa? This communication, right? This has to be handled. Our project is talking about the same thing actually. We have something like React as a front-end UI, Node.js as a middleware, and PostgreSQL or MySQL as a database. Now, how you are going to provide this communication between them? Obviously, first point has to be internal communication. Why? Because only UI should be visible to your end users, right?
Yes.
For example, you take Facebook. Facebook database, don't provide access to us. Why? It is unnecessary for us, right? We want access only to the UI, and we are accessing only our account. So that is the first point. Then what about access of your middleware and the database? They use internal load balancer. So here we need to have a load balancing concept. Or if you are using microservices, we have a different approach. In Kubernetes, it's a different approach. It means in containerization technology, it is a different approach. And in a virtual machines, it is a different approach. But anywhere it is, we have to use a load balancer.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got your point, but only sorry to interrupt you. Like the question, what I'm trying to ask is, see, we have only one role, okay, which has to have a permission of like, okay, the services, okay, EC2 service should have access to the RDS, okay, and also the drives, also in the like establishment of the token, everything in the sense, okay. So we'll use everything one ID. One ID will have all these privileges, right?
Are you running all these three applications on a single instance? Is my first question.
For example, DB is separate instance. DB running on separate EC2.
Okay. Let's say you have RDS service. Anyway, that is one of the service in AWS. What about your front end and back end? Where you're running it?
Front end, I'm running on the like I'm just using the front end as this one. Okay, like Amazon registry. Okay, whereas Amazon registry like CDN we are using, right? Like Cloudflare.
Okay. What about your backend middleware? We call it as backend.
Like you can take an example of this one, like Tomcat. Okay,
that's fine. Where you are running it? Platform.
Platform is I'm running on like everything is running on EC2 only. Okay.
Okay. Your front end, you said it is running on?
Front end running on you can this will take the stateless Lambda services. Okay. So that's
Lambda. Okay. Fine.
so in that case, if I want to have a connectivity, one rule,
See,
I mean,
see. You are clubbing 2 points here actually.
okay.
Why your front end wants to communicate to front end wants to communicate to the back end, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it application to application communication or service to service communication?
See, in where service to service communication, okay. Put
So when it is service to service communication, for this particular front end, if there is a possibility to attach a role, we can attach a role and providing the permissions for this EC2.
Okay.
But my confusion part is, let me try to understand from my side. Your front end application, why it wants to communicate to your EC2? Technically, it has to communicate to your application inside it, right?
Okay, the inside that's what I'm coming. Okay, so when get the request comes to, let's go like put it in this way. Okay, when I get the request from web server, so I'm just forwarding the request to the app server. Okay, from app server, then it has to go to collect some information from the DB. Okay, so it's have like front end as I'm using like web server like Tomcat. Okay, and middleware I can use like a JBoss. Okay, and the backend I use as a DB. Okay, like we have like can use like Postgres also. Okay. So in the time I have all this communication with the request, okay? Because front end no need to know the DB part or anything, but at least the request has to go to the back end, right?
So there is no point of using roles here. Simple.
Okay. Okay.
It is applications communication. It is not service to service communication, right?
So here everything is service, right? For example, front end, back end.
No. In EC2, for example, my question is pretty simple. Let us say you have a front end. Are you running any activities on EC2 or application?
It's like like it's more front end as application, right? Just sometimes we like dynamic, sometimes
no. Let us divide this way. I don't want about other things and all. Tell me one thing. You have a front end UI. That front end UI wants to communicate to your EC2 instance and do some action, or your application, backend application running on it.
Front end application just to do the pass in just to pass the request. That's the only thing it's doing.
Requested. So what is the point of executing AWS CLI commands for or API call on EC2? Technically, your front end wants to communicate to your backend application. So it will communicate to your backend API. So there is no point of using roles here. It's just we have to provide a traffic in the network. So through the network, we have to establish a communication between the backend and front end. That's it. There is no point of using a role. See, imagine role is something that you want to do some activity on a service, not an application running on that service.
Okay. So you stay talking about the application perspective. You're saying only the application has to be communicated.
Application has to communicate. There is no point of doing some activity on that service, right? If you really want to perform, let us say, here, let me divide this. For example, you have a backend application. From the front end, let us say it is a kind of a restaurant. You uploaded some picture. Not that particular picture request will go to the backend. Now backend wants to communicate. The backend application running on this EC2 wants to communicate to S3 bucket and upload that particular image. Then what I have to do? I have to assign a role to this EC2 instance.
Okay.
You got it? Okay. Now what I will do, I will create a role. I will give some IAM policies to do some activity on the S3 to upload image. Then that role I will attach to the EC2 instance, because application running on this particular EC2 instance is trying to do some activity on S3. So there is no point of storing the credentials in backend application, right? I can use this particular role. That's it. That's the reason I divided your question into two parts. Are you talking about service or are you talking about application?
Okay, that's what the confusion is. When you talk about service, I'll talking about see, for example, in AWS, everything we say service, right? Like EC2 instance and everything. So I was thinking that in that perspective, but what I was living, when you say like front end, right? So if my web server, if my web server has to talk to send the request to the back end, if for example, and the person if I want to do any changes on my front end, the user credentials, what I'm using inside to log into the server and do the changes, that role that ID, if I'm using the ID is same, that I can use like same rule for this front-end server and the middle server.
No.
I mean,
Why your backend will communicate to your front end? It will only send the response. Backend will never modify the front end UI. That's not the
okay.
strategy. Never.
Okay.
Only
there is-
UI. See, UI will pass the request, or it will send. It will receive the acknowledgement. UI doesn't modify anything. Okay. UI will pass the data to the backend. Backend will do the actual action. Either it will contact RDS, or it will contact any storage to upload some data or to download some data. That is where you have to think about whether we have to use a role or whether your application is directly contacting it. You have to think about it. If it is running, let us say your backend application is running on EC2. If your backend application wants to talk to S3, you have to attach EC2 IAM role to this particular instance.
Okay.
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 What about RDS? When your backend application wants to talk to RDS, what you will do?
So I need to create a connection, right? Because I need to connect to them. I have to get the data from RDS, right?
So you have to update the database username, password, IP address, or host name. Those details you have to update in the backend. Here, there is no point of using a role.
Okay. And a role that's what so for example, like DBAs and other folks, they have their own admin access. Okay. When application connect to them, they will need only the connect role, right? Connect or like to run some of the procedures route. Okay. So in that case, if I want to give access, so that particular ID, okay, need to have some privilege of application read write access, right?
No. To whom you want to give this RDS service? To your user, developer, DBA user, or application?
Application. I'm talking about.
That's what I'm saying. For application, what is the point of using IAM role?
So what we happen? I mean,
are you running a simple question? Are you running any API call to this RDS service?
So when you API call in the sense, like for example, some application, local landscape application, to get any data from this backend application, they can directly run it. Okay, they're not going to run on the DB, but they're going to run on this application, the backend application.
Okay.
I'm confusing you.
It is pretty simple. Let us say you have RDS. This is a backend and this is a front end. This is more of a UI, and actual operations will be done on the backend to fetch some data, to retrieve some data, to render some data. Everything will be done by backend. So you are saying this is running on one particular AWS service. Okay. Let us say this is your backend is running on EC2 and your database is running on RDS service. Here, when we have to use a role, what do you will say for that, according to the topic that you have understood?
Okay. So role comes into picture only when we have, like, I mean, for example, if I want to connect, okay, then I should have that user ID should have a
connect in the sense, connect in your perspective, what is meant by connect?
Connect in the sense, like, I mean, my application have the user ID will be there, okay, right? Like, for example, to connect to the database, right? That
true.
ID, okay, that ID should have a privilege to connect to the DB.
I'm asking, like, why is needed? Are you running any activity on RDS service or inside the database?
Inside the database, connect to the DB.
Then what is the point of using a IAM role over there? Here, so there are 2 points. Are you contacting the platform or are you contacting the application on it? Let us say database is nothing but your application. Let us assume like that. You have a database inside this RDS service. Your backend application, is it trying to do some operations on RDS service or is it trying to communicate to your database?
Doing some operations on RDS. I mean, this is database.
It will do on, how come? Backend application will try to store some data in the database or it will try to retrieve some data from the database. That's it. The backend application will never contact RDS service. It will contact RDS service only for that URL, the IP address or a host name to reach the database server. Imagine your RDS is like a server. Okay. Now, for that server, either you will have IP address or a host name. So you will provide that particular details over here. It will send the traffic to that particular server to reach the database. We are not running any activities on RDS service, right? like list RDS services. Oh, okay, modify RDS services. We are not doing that action from backend. We are accessing only the database on that RDS service.
That's true. The second part is, for example, I want to connect to the RDS server to check that, okay, the any like, I mean, like, for example, if the connect services or the application DB is working or up or not, I have to check do some validations on that part. So in that case,
Then obviously you have to attach IAM role. Yes, you have to.
so that is what I was. I mean, when I was in another way, and like I mean, I wanted to do that. So then those privileges, like we had to give us IAM role, right?
Simple.
Server.
If you want to contact your service, please use IAM role. Okay. When you want to contact the application on top of it, try to use your traffic. That's all.
Okay, correct.
Other people can ignore if you are not understood. Yeah. So any other questions apart from this? I hope everyone is trying to delete the instances after your task was done. Don't keep it as it is, though it is a free tier.
No, even that's a free tier. Like when we add the storage, right? So they're charging for the storage also.
No, if you have to use in below 30 GB.
Yeah.
You might be launching 2 instances with 20 GB, 20 GB. Then you have crossed the limit, right? 30 GB.
Yeah. Probably, yeah, I got the bill for that one. I mean,
Overall number of instances, it doesn't care. Overall storage has to be less than 30 GB or equivalent to 30 GB, not more than that.
When I tried to delete them, it shows terminated, and it still shows them, but it shows terminated.
This is like a garbage collection. Even for me, you can see it got terminated. AWS will try if you log out and re-log in after some time, this will not be there. This is kind of a cache. You can ignore it.
Okay.
We call it as garbage collection.
Yeah, sorry. We still have the security key, all secret, all those things are still there. The security and then the peak, like the remember that we created the key. Those are all still there, so it should be fine, right?
No, nothing. See, you can't do anything with this instance. First of all, though you are able to see key here, you can't download it. Okay?
Yeah.
We can't download it. That key was only available under here, right? This will be there all the time. You're not deleting this. You are deleting only your instance.
And also, like there is the security, right? The security also we created some. So that is also
we call it as inbound and outbound rules. Those will also get deleted. Those will be there.
Yeah, I deleted them, but the only thing left was the default one is still there. But
default you should not delete. Keep it as it is.
Yeah.
Don't delete the default. Maybe from Monday you will understand what is this concept is all about, because we are going to start from Monday with networking part. That's a vast syllabus actually. Networking part. It might take 1 week or more than 1 week. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we are good. Let me close this. Yeah, that's all for today, guys. We'll meet on Monday. So this weekend, try to complete all the tasks which I've given and make sure you're on the page. Okay. Because in upcoming sessions, you might see a different task. Altogether, it will be a burden for you. That's all for today. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.